Welcome to Billionaires Eden. What if I told you that some of the richest people alive didn't start with millions in the bank, or family wealth, or even connections? In fact, many of them began with nothing, some even poorer than the people you see struggling today. No fancy schools, no powerful friends, no safety nets. Just hunger, ideas, and a relentless drive that pushed them beyond the limits of ordinary life. Take Howard Schultz, for example. He grew up in a poor housing complex in Brooklyn, where his father worked hard but never had health insurance or stability. Schultz saw firsthand what poverty does to a family. But instead of letting that define him, he used it as fuel. Years later, when he discovered a small coffee shop in Seattle called Starbucks, he saw more than beans. He saw possibility, a place where coffee wasn't just a drink but an experience. People laughed at the idea. Investors doubted him, yet he built it anyway. Today, Starbucks is a global empire, serving millions daily. From broken streets to billion-dollar boardrooms, that's the path he walked. But if a kid from a broken home could build a coffee empire, what about someone who started with nothing more than her voice? Oprah Winfrey was born into poverty, wearing dresses sewn from potato sacks. She faced abuse, rejection, and humiliation. Most would have given up. But Oprah had one thing: her voice. She knew how to connect with people, to make them feel heard and understood. That voice turned into a career in television, and that career turned into a media empire. Oprah didn't just make money, she built trust. And trust, in the world of billionaires, is more valuable than gold. But what happens when you don't even have language? Do Chong came to America from South Korea with no English, no money, and no plan. He worked as a janitor, gas station attendant, and coffee shop worker, 3 jobs, endless exhaustion. Yet he and his wife had a dream. They opened a small clothing store, focused on affordable fashion, and grew it into Forever 21, a brand worth billions. From cleaning floors to owning malls. Still, not everyone's path to billions is paved with clothes or coffee. Some found wealth in the language of machines. Larry Ellison, for example, grew up in a modest Chicago neighborhood, dropped out of college twice, and seemed destined for mediocrity. But he had one obsession: technology. When businesses were still shuffling paper, Ellison bet everything on databases. Nobody cared at first, but when the world went digital, Oracle became the backbone of corporations worldwide. A dropout had built the software empire running global business. Yet, sometimes the richest stories start not with silicon chips, but with sawdust. François Pinault grew up in rural France, bullied for being poor, dropping out of school to work in his father's sawmill. Nothing glamorous. But he had sharp instincts. He began buying struggling companies others ignored. Slowly, piece by piece, he stitched together an empire. Today, his name is behind Gucci, Saint Laurent, and Balenciaga. From sawdust to silk, Pinault proved that timing and vision can transform poverty into luxury. But what if the world you lived in collapsed overnight? Would you see ruin, or opportunity? Roman Abramovich was an orphan in Soviet Russia, selling plastic toys just to survive. Life tried to crush him. But when the Soviet Union fell apart, Abramovich saw what others missed. He dove into the chaos, made bold deals, and built an oil empire. Later, he bought Chelsea Football Club, becoming a global icon. His rise shows the truth: billionaires thrive where others see nothing but uncertainty. Still, oil isn't the only path from rags to riches. Some started at the very bottom, literally washing dishes. Shahid Khan arrived in America with just $500. His first job: washing dishes for $1.20 an hour. But Khan refused to stay there. He designed car bumpers, bought a struggling auto parts company, and turned it into a global giant. Today, he owns the Jacksonville Jaguars NFL team. From dishwasher to sports mogul, his story is living proof of the American dream. And then there are those who turned pain into power. J.K. Rowling was a struggling single mother, living on welfare, rejected by publishers over and over. At one point, she couldn't even afford heating. But she kept writing. And that persistence birthed Harry Potter, a story that became a global phenomenon, turning Rowling into the world's first billionaire author. She transformed her poverty into a universe of magic. But some didn't rely on magic, they relied on code. Jan Koum grew up in Ukraine, in a home without running water. When he moved to the US with his mother, they lived on food stamps. He taught himself to code using second-hand manuals. Years later, he co-founded WhatsApp, an app that connected billions of people. Facebook bought it for $19 billion. From food stamps to one of the biggest tech deals in history. So what do all these stories show us? That billionaires are not always born with silver spoons. Many started with broken homes, rejection, failure, or even hunger. But what set them apart wasn't just luck. It was vision, the ability to see what others couldn't. It was resilience, the refusal to quit after rejection. And it was timing, the courage to move before the rest of the world caught on. From Schultz turning coffee into culture, to Oprah turning pain into power, to Koum turning code into billions, the pattern is clear. Rags to riches isn't magic. It's about persistence. And here's the lesson. The difference between those who stay poor and those who rise is simple. Billionaires don't stop when they're tired. They don't stop when they're rejected. They stop only when the dream is real. So the next time you see a billionaire, remember, behind every fortune was once someone who had nothing. Behind every empire was once someone cleaning floors, writing in coffee shops, or living off food stamps. And behind every success story, was once a person who refused to quit. That's how billionaires really make money.